So
And
WWE are the prisoners.
Well, WWE are the ones who have made it. They're the prison.
Sure.
So do you think that WWE would air a vignette where they're saying, yeah, we're the prison?
Well, I think...
Not a family, as we say. We're a prison.
We have reached the finale of Fantasy Booking Warfare. After a pair of harrowing journeys, Oli Davis, having bested Sat and Luke, faces Tempest, who topped Sullivan and Laurie in the tournament final of champions. Who is the least terrible booker of fantasy wrestling, and who came all this way for absolutely nothing? Let's go to our judges and begin the final round as Oli and Tempest book the Shield Triple Threat match.
I'm Dave Bradshaw, and for the past 15 years, I have been a play-by-play commentator in British and European wrestling.
Off the top, missile dropkick! Can he get it? Yes, he can! He's the champion of the world!
I am the master of the half crab, the current reigning undisputed British heavyweight champion, Michael Oku, and who better to tell you how bad things are booked than me?
I'm Nina Samuels, star of The Nina Samuels Show, and here on Wrestle Talk, because of course, Wrestle Talk needs more Nina.
It is tense, I can tell you that much, because our two finalists, Oli and Tempest, are going to compete for the title of champion of Fantasy Booking Warfare. Mike, we were saying before we came on air, both of them in one of their two previous matches have had a clean sweep.
It's not going to be any time for being sympathetic or being like, they were good, but there was a bit bad. No, it needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
There is no room for error when you're in the final.
We have shaped these two men into the excellent fantasy bookers that they are.
We have coached them, absolutely.
With tough love,
Yeah.
some would argue.
Well, let's see if they've improved even further into the final. Today we are booking the Shield Triple Threat. Can't wait to see this one. Ollie's up first. You guys ready?
I am so ready.
All right, let's see how Oli has booked the Shield Triple Threat.
On the road to WrestleMania 40, the Bloodline has been bleeding members. First Jay, then Solo, and on WrestleMania itself, Jay and Jimmy embrace after a bloody war, leaving Roman Reigns with just Paul Heyman for his main event title defense against Cody Rhodes. It's nearing the end of a Reigns match, so you know what that means. Ref bump. Double down. Heyman looks around for backup, but there's no one. So he grabs the championship belt when Seth Rollins' music hits. On the go-home Raw, Seth had already told Cody to beat Reigns for him. Then Seth can beat Cody for the title afterwards. Rollins grabs the belt from Heyman and gets in the ring. He looks at Cody, who's on all fours. He looks at Roman, who's struggling to his knees. He limply holds up a defeated Shield fist bump. Rollins throws down the belt in front of Cody for him to use. Roman is now visibly crying. Rhodes nods, picks up the belt to win the match when Seth stomps Cody's head onto the title as he's getting up. The story remains unfinished. Roman holds his title in disbelief as Seth exits the ring. The next night on Raw, Seth explains his heel turn. It pains him to watch Cody come in, beat Seth 3 times, then not challenge for his World Heavyweight title. Is my title not good enough? Seth focuses his anger on Cody, never actually saying he's jealous that Roman, his Shield protege, is the real head of the table. Heyman suggests a new venture to Roman to replace the Bloodline. If anything, the Bloodline was just a prototype for what this new architecture could be. Blood didn't work out for them anyway, so why don't we partner with Rollins? After weeks of teasing backstage segments, the new partnership is announced. Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins are a new 2-man power trip called The Protection. But unlike the Bloodline, they are true equals with no one being jealous of each other. Seth explains as long as they've got both world titles, which will be forever, they'll run this place. He'll run Raw and Roman will run SmackDown, the heads of 2 different tables united. This begins the protection era of WWE, and just like the mob bosses Roman and Seth are emulating, they exert control over their respective brands by offering protection. You might call it extortion, in other words. Heels flock to the protection, realizing if you join them, more often than not, you're going to win because of interference. WWE becomes a heel-dominated promotion where babyfaces like Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and Cody Rhodes try to establish a resistance. This gets increasingly bad over the summer, so Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce have devised a plan. At this year's Survivor Series, it'll be champion versus champion. It'll be Rollins versus Reigns. The Protection have a rare joint in-ring segment as a response. Usually, they keep to their respective territories of Raw and SmackDown. Seth says WWE can't drive a wedge between them. He can see what they're doing. They're forgetting that Seth's a mastermind. He's the architect of the Shield. He's the mastermind of the Protection too. Seth stops dead on the mic, realizing what he's just said. The crowd collectively gasps. Just like Roman's Bloodline segment with Jey Uso getting too big for his boots, Reigns is behind Rollins with a "You what, mate?" face. Seth immediately backtracks. They're good for now. At Survivor Series, unconnected to anything else, a short film begins to play. It shows a high-security prison. Inmates are being locked up in cells. A patrol dog is barking. You can hear snippets of Seth's laughter and Roman's "ooh, ah" in the sound mix. It ends. It's time for the main event, Rollins versus Reigns. At first, they circle each other smiling. They have a few standard exchanges. Then Seth kicks Roman rather stiffly. Reigns didn't like that. The strikes get heavier and heavier as the decade-long tensions between the two come to the surface. Getting more and more angry, Reigns goes to low blow Seth, but he stops himself. There's a ref bump, of course, and Rollins instinctively grabs a steel chair. Roman gets to his feet. Seth's winding up the chair, just like the Shield breakup all those years ago. But Rollins stops himself too, throwing it away before Roman turns round. The shocking swerve here is that neither man cheats. There's no distractions, no interference. Seth just counters a spear into a stomp to win clean. Rollins is almost as surprised as we are. Roman is out cold, and when he comes to, he can't believe it either, looking a mixture of confused, furious, and scared. Roman is gone for the next month, and Seth downplays any rumours they've fallen out. Weekly TV keeps getting more clips of the prison we saw at Survivor Series and its extensive security measures. With cracks showing in the Protection, Cody Rhodes takes on Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship at the last pay-per-view of the year, Payback. There's a ref bump, so Roman Reigns makes his return to help Rollins, just like Seth did at WrestleMania. He throws the World Heavyweight title into the ring, but his aim is misjudged. It falls exactly between the two men. They scramble for it at the same time. Cody hits a crossroads onto it and wins the World Heavyweight Championship. The following Raw, Roman, Seth and Paul Heyman all appear in the ring together, a show of unity. Michael Cole points out that Rollins once said the Protection would rule WWE as long as they both held world championships, but now Seth doesn't have one. Roman clutches his belt a little tighter, starting Reigns becoming increasingly more paranoid. On the go-home SmackDown for the Royal Rumble, Roman and Seth have an in-ring meeting of the families, mediated by Heyman. Rollins addresses rumours that he's going to enter the Royal Rumble so he can face Reigns, which he won't do. The Protection only works if they both hold gold. If he beats Roman for his belt, like he did at Survivor Series, there would still only be one title between them, so he's not going to enter the Royal Rumble. He'll focus on winning his title back from Cody in a singles match. Roman and Rollins embrace, and then, for the first time, the prison clips interrupt the Protection. We're shown an inmate locked in a cell. One guard says to the other, "Why are we putting so much protection in place? These punks couldn't break out a paper bag." "Ain't anyone told you?" the other guard says. "It ain't there to stop these guys breaking out. It's to stop him breaking in." At that point, a siren starts to wail. We cut closer to the prison in the grounds. We're following behind a hooded figure walking intently towards the front gates. He takes out one guard. He takes out another. He pauses at the prison door. He stands there, shoulders heaving up and down, up and down. He kicks it through. The film cuts to black. We cut back to Roman and Seth watching confused from the ring. Then the familiar chords of Wild Thing starts to play. Wild Thing, you make my heart sing. We cut to the arena concourse again, following behind the hooded man. He's taking out heel Protection wrestlers trying to stop him. He walks into the crowd, and there he is, picked up by the TV broadcast cameras. Dean Ambrose has returned to WWE. He grabs a chair and enters the ring. He's looking at them both. Then he holds out a Shield bumping fist. Roman and Seth start to smile. And then Ambrose flips it into a middle finger and goes to hit Rollins with a chair. Seth drags Roman in front of him as a shield, Reigns is knocked out, and Rollins runs away. At the Royal Rumble, Ambrose stops Seth from cheating, meaning Cody retains his World Heavyweight title. So after Ambrose enters the Rumble early, Rollins comes out as number 30. They fight to the final two, Reigns watching from ringside, concerned either way. He goes to pass his title belt to Seth to help him win, but second guesses himself and pulls it away. Ambrose comes from nowhere to hit Rollins with a huge lariat, sending them both over the top rope and hitting the floor at the exact same time. In the weeks that follows, Ambrose is very clear. He wants Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. He's got years of never being seen as a top guy in WWE. He was always the other one in the Shield. Well, now he's going to come and beat the chosen boy on the biggest stage. Because of the Rumble draw, though, Rollins could choose to fight for Cody's belt at WrestleMania or Roman's. He strings both along and finally, just weeks away in an in-ring segment with Roman, Cody standing on the ramp, Seth announces he'll fight the weaker man. Reigns grins, turning to look up at Cody, while Rollins picks up a steel chair, just like that original Shield turn, the act he rejected at Survivor Series, and clatters it on Roman's back. WrestleMania will be Reigns versus Rollins versus Ambrose. At the end of a War of a Mania main event, with all three guys killing each other, Seth has the chair once again prepped behind Roman's back. He's waiting for Reigns to stand so he can hit him, but Ambrose recovers, hitting Rollins with a chair first. Revenge for Seth's betrayal all those years ago. Roman goes to Spear Dean, but Ambrose counters it into a Death Rider onto the fallen chair to become the undisputed WWE Universal Champion.
There we have it, the Shield triple threat as booked by Oli Davis. And Nina, it ends with Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania 41, ending the historic title reign of Roman Reigns.
I like the fact that Rollins is the first one to give Reigns a loss. I think that's a really clever way of doing it, because I think it's got to the point now where no one's buying anything of Reigns dropping that title until WrestleMania. Giving him a loss when the title's not on the line, I think was a really clever way of like adding some jeopardy.
I didn't like it.
Okay,
I didn't like the Survivor Series thing. Big match because it's champion versus champion. Rollins versus Reigns, so much history there. Why on earth wouldn't the titles be on the line? When you're this deep into a Roman Reigns title reign, you know how many years we are at that point by the time you get to Survivor Series. Doesn't it cheapen Reigns' title reign as well?
Yeah, it's a fair thing to point out for sure. Like at this point, just like a singles loss being something to it, but there's something to revealing a weakness close to the actual end of like a big like final boss's reign. That's kind of cool. Where like if it's just 100% just unbeaten until they lose, yeah, that works. But then I guess it just gives some strength to the eventual triple threat. That it's like, hey, it's not just then triple threat's not just about Roman losing. I think. By that happening, it's about the three of them. I
just think there is no way we're buying anything to do with Reigns dropping the title until a WrestleMania at this point. So there needs to be something where we can show a chink in the armor, whether it's a loss in a tag match or, you know, a triple threat could have been a good way to do it, because then you could have, especially if Rollins is involved, because then you could have some callback moments.
I think for me, he went to the well of the chair shot too many times. The chair shots to the back of Reigns.
It's iconic though, isn't it?
Yeah, so but it doesn't mean that you have to just spray it out whenever and whip it out at every opportunity. I think that's what he did. I think he blew his load. I think Oli Davis blew his load. And if it was there, I think the one time to have done it is where he put it in the main event in the actual triple threat match and be like, oh yeah, remember this? If we do this, people will be like, wow, great storytelling, because that.
I think a moment before WrestleMania would have been a good call. I do see where you're coming from, maybe not as many.
Is that the right result in this booking scenario, the way Ollie's booked it? Dean Ambrose to go over at the end and to end Reigns' title reign, what do we think?
There's great scope for Rollins and Reigns feud after that, and of course Dean Ambrose being gone for so long, there are all of these fresh feuds that he could have. In terms of future booking, I think it probably is the right way to go.
This would be the thing to compare with Tempest of like, okay,
Yes.
when we have the two of them, what is the one that makes the most sense?
I'm definitely intrigued to see what Tempest does.
It is a great idea. We should watch Tempests. Should we
Why
do that
not?
now?
Let's do that.
Let's do it. Let's see how Tempest would book the Shield triple threat.
Let's set the scene. It is present day. Seth Rollins is your World Heavyweight Champion. Roman Reigns, your WWE, quote, undisputed, brackets, we don't know what undisputed means, close bracket, end quote, champion, and both successfully defend their titles at Crown Jewel. Seth defeats Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns defeats LA Knight. Not too much fantasy for this booking just yet, but bear with me. Now, I ask that you don't simply deduct points for this immediately. I mean you, Michael Oku. Give me a chance, because it is time for brand warfare. With Survivor Series set as the next WWE pay-per-view, Adam Pearce comes to Seth backstage and tells him that Raw needs him to do what no one has been able to do in almost 4 years. Beat Roman Reigns one-on-one. Seth simply smiles, maybe he does that stupid laugh, and he walks away. That same week on SmackDown, Roman Reigns makes his way to the ring and extends his hand for Paul Heyman to give him a mic, but before he could speak, Seth Rollins' music hits and he enters the ring as well. Seth and Roman stand face to face and Seth says, "Suffer and succotash, here we are again, brother." Over 10 years it has been, and now here we stand, about to walk into Survivor Series as the top dogs in this business. Me number 1, he raises his title. You number 2. Roman laughs, says, "Oh, I'm number 2? Insert name of town, acknowledge me," which receives thunderous applause. Doesn't sound like number 2 to me. Seth, you always used to say you were the man, and I don't know if it's because your wife stole that catchphrase or what, but you don't seem to understand that just carrying around a belt doesn't make you the man. Being the man makes you the man, he says as Paul Heyman raises his belt in the air. Seth laughs, then calms all the way down and says, "How can you be the man when you've never beaten me?" The crowd goes, "Oh," as Seth continues, "See, you can name all the people that you have beaten over the course of this monotonous, never-ending reign. Cody, Sammy, Brock, Cena, Edge, Bryan, but you've been leaving my name out of your mouth, buddy boy, because at the Royal Rumble last year, you didn't beat me. And I talked to the good man Adam Pearce, and we agree I'm owed a rematch for that title of yours." Roman snarls as he is obviously none too happy, but as he and Seth stand face to face, the crowd starts going wild, they're buzzing, and as the reaction builds, the camera finds AEW World Champion Jon Moxley walking through the crowd. Now we are getting into fantasy, of course, but before this booking started, Moxley got hold of the AEW World Championship. Simple as that. Seth and Roman's eyes are as big as saucers, their mouths agape as Mox saunters into the ring, grabs the microphone from Seth's hand before allowing the crowd to bask in holy shit chants. Moxley finally raises the mic and says, "Well, it's nice to see you too. As far as I'm concerned, both you clowns have been fighting over number 2 because for the last 4 years I have proven that I am and have always been number 1 in this business. And I guess you both didn't get the memo because I have it on good authority from Tony Khan that Survivor Series isn't going to be Raw versus SmackDown. Who gives a about that? You both better prepare for the fight of your lives because Survivor Series is WWE versus AEW." He throws the mic down and leaves the ring, exiting through the crowd, and indeed, wrestling social media gets set ablaze as WWE and AEW announce they have struck a deal to make Survivor Series 2023 the biggest cross-promotional wrestling event in North American wrestling history, with the main event of that show being WWE Undisputed Champion Roman Reigns versus World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins versus AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Seth shows up on Raw the following Monday, first appearing in a backstage segment with Adam Pearce, saying, "This is not what I was asked to do. I was promised a WWE Undisputed Championship singles match with Roman Reigns, and that is the match I expect to receive." Pearce says things are more complicated than that now. It's out of his hands. Seth asks if he's even going to get an Undisputed title match at all, and Pearce says that's out of his hands too, as Seth storms off seething. On that Wednesday's AEW Dynamite, after the opening match, Seth storms the ring while Excalibur is running down the show, saying, "Hey, you want to invade my show? This can go both ways, pal." Similar to how he did at NXT TakeOver San Antonio. Before long, Wild Thing begins to play as Moxley enters through the arena, and as Mox is getting in the ring, Seth starts yelling, "Yeah, I get it, you're a big man around these parts, but you think that gives you the right to walk into my house and steal my moment? You think that belt makes you anything more than the king of a pissant company?" As boos rain down on Seth, Mox says, "Man, you're even starting to sound like Papa H now. What are you so mad about, Seth? I thought you'd be thrilled to see me. I mean, you don't call anymore. Is it that I stepped on your little moment? Or is it because once I stepped in the ring with you and Roman, you felt small? Almost like you're number 3? Seth fires up and says, "No, you don't get it, do you, Dean? I don't hate that you came back. I hate that you left. You cost us so much. We could have rode the Shield name for the rest of our careers. We could have lived like kings at the top of the wrestling world year in and year out, and you gave that up for what? So you can bleed every week for these people? You quit on me, and now you want to step into my house and take my title shot? Not gonna happen, pal." Mox, having listened to all of this, says, "Seth, you really have taken all this far too personally. I'm gonna tell you right now what I should have told you 10 years ago when we walked down those stairs together. Not everything is about you. You've really got balls to step into my house and tell me that I quit on the Shield. If you wanted to stay fat and happy and pad that bank account that you love talking about so much, you wouldn't have shoved that knife in our backs in the first place. But not everything is about the money, Seth. Maybe you would have been happy hearing Sierra Hotel, India Echo Lima Delta every year until you were old and gray for the sake of a Shield reunion paycheck. But me? I've paid off my house. I've paid off my truck. I've bought my mom a house. I have enough to put my daughter through college. None of this matters to me. What matters to me is being the very best in this sport, and for the last 4 years, I have bled buckets proudly to prove that when that bell rings, there is no one in this industry that wants to be the best more than John Moxley. And I promise you, that includes Seth Rollins, and that damn well includes Roman Reigns. He drops the mic and he leaves. That Friday, Seth Rollins tries to talk to Nick Aldis regarding his undisputed title shot, but Aldis tells him it is not his job to make him happy, and this situation is out of his hands too. But by next week, the WWE and AEW boards will have come to an agreement regarding the stakes for Survivor Series. Elsewhere on all these shows, other matches are being made for Survivor Series. Gunther versus Orange Cassidy, a 10-man tag, Io Sky versus Hikaru Shida, and so on. The following Monday on Raw, Seth opens up the show by making his way down to the ring when his music is cut off by the music of Roman Reigns, who comes down only to be met with the music of Wild Thing as Jon Moxley makes his way through the crowd. The Shield once again stands in the ring together, and as Seth faces Moxley and raises the mic, Roman Reigns says, Nah, cut that shit. You and you have said more than enough. You're both so self-absorbed that neither of you probably realize that because of both of you, I have spent the last decade listening to people chatter. Oh, you gotta do this, Roman. You gotta do that. You gotta keep the vest. You gotta keep the music. People love the Shield. All the while you two were on this bickering bullshit. I had to be what they wanted because you two were too busy fighting each other. Oh, he broke up the Shield, he says, pointing at Rollins. Big deal. Look at us. We're all far better apart than we ever were together. Seth sinks his head, but raises the mic to say, See, you say that, Roman, but all three of us know that one chair shot in 2014 did more to you than it did to either of us. Roman looks incredulous, but Seth continues, Dean and I may have our differences, but in all these years, Roman, you've never really trusted again, have you? You don't trust your own family. What? All because I hit one little chair shot 9 years ago? I may not like the choices he's made, but Dean has moved on. I have moved on. But you You never really moved on from that night in Indianapolis, have you? Roman is clearly affected by this and attempts to hit a Superman punch on Seth, but Seth dodges and each man involved tries to hit their finisher on the other, but each slips out and all three men stand at ringside as Adam Pearce walks out onto the stage to say that the WWE board and Tony Khan have come to an agreement regarding Survivor Series. This Friday on SmackDown, Jimmy Uso will represent Roman Reigns, Wheeler Yuta will represent Jon Moxley, and Seth will have 4 days to find someone to represent him in a triple threat match, and the participant that takes the fall in that match, their champion, will put their title on the line at Survivor Series. That Friday, Seth is approached by one of the members of Team WWE, Chad Gable, to be his representative in that night's main event, which Seth accepts. That night, it is Chad Gable, representing Seth Rollins, versus Wheeler Yuta, representing Jon Moxley, versus Jimmy Uso, representing Roman Reigns, with all three champions at ringside, and after a great match, Gable is able to pin Jimmy Uso to ensure Roman Reigns' undisputed title is at stake at Survivor Series. Roman Reigns is none too pleased. That Sunday, Survivor Series takes place in Indianapolis, the same building where the Shield debuted and the same venue where the Shield broke up in 2014. And in the main event, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Jon Moxley do battle. They have a match worthy of a WrestleMania main event, complete with the pomp, circumstance, and aura that would befit such a match. There are many highlights of this match, such as Roman going on such a run of dominance, trash-talking both Seth and Mox, that they are forced to band together to hit Roman with a double powerbomb through the announce table. But when Seth tries to go for the cover and Mox inevitably breaks it up, Seth says, "What is your problem, Dean?" Which Mox finally snaps at, beating Seth down long enough for Roman to recover and hit a spear on Mox, which he kicks out of. But as Mox mounts a comeback on Roman, Seth jumps back into the ring, hitting Roman with a knee, but as he goes for the curb stomp on Moxley, Mox tenses up and launches Seth into the air to be hit with a spear from Roman, who throws Mox out of the ring and covers Seth for the 1, 2, 3, retaining his title, finally beating Seth Rollins, sending Mox back to AEW, and ending the hopes for a Shield reunion for good.
Okay.
Wow. Something that ended up at Survivor Series and not a War Games match.
Yeah, there wasn't a War Games match. Yeah,
I can't believe how different the two are. Like initially, when I could see this was going to Survivor Series versus Roman and Seth, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to go a similar route, but polar opposites.
Yeah, the epitome of fantasy booking.
Fantasy, hey,
Yes.
Go for it.
It's,
you know,
it's allowed within the rules.
Yeah, I'd say it's like finding logic within the fantasy. I do appreciate Tempest going that extra step of like, well, actually,
Which is more fantasy? Moxley going back to WWE or AEW doing a co-promotion with WWE?
that's a great question.
That's the debate.
That's it, actually, yeah. So actually,
What did you think of the promos? Because I thought the way that Tempest talked us through everything that they were going to say, the motivations of each character, I thought that was pretty stunning.
self-explaining with Roman having that argument, what I thought was really great about just like, hey, listen, we were better together as the Shield. It was just really well done. I just really think it was really well done.
The ego element as well of like the who's the one, who's the two, and then bringing in the who's the one, the two, and the three. I feel like given that they have both gone and they have all gone in such different directions, and you know, no secret, they all want to be the top in their field. I feel like going down that ego route, and I think Mox pointing it out is probably the smartest way, because Reigns and Rollins is probably most going to get under their skin. So again, I think that's a good way to fuel it.
I wasn't totally convinced by the triple threat match on SmackDown where they all had a different representative. To start with, why did Rollins get to pick and the other two? I mean, I guess the two that got picked for Reigns and Moxley were sort of obvious choices, but still, for those stakes, this Chad Gable, Jimmy Uso, Wheeler Yuta.
Whereas even the element that there are AEW wrestlers and WWE wrestlers going against each other, you could argue it doesn't really matter who it is, because that in itself is the draw. But yeah, it was over very, very quickly, and all this for Reigns to retain.
Yeah, done by Survivor Series, it's all done in a month. Is that a waste of a? You know, if you were fantasy booking this inter-promotional war, you'd have it go more than 3 weeks, right?
100%. Yeah, it's got to be more than that.
It's the 4th biggest pay-per-view of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can find the argument that you're making it big by this happening, but too short.
I mean,
Hey, we'll ask Tempest.
Okay, let's ask. We'll ask him.
Why not long?
And actually, should we ask him right now? Let's get Tempest
Let's.
and Ollie in there if we can, please. Gentlemen, you have arrived. The final of Fantasy Booking Warfare. Ollie and Tempest, congratulations on making it this far. Ollie, a victory over Sat in the first round, and then Luke in the semi-finals. How do you feel Tempest is going to compare as an opponent?
Well, I've seen his booking, obviously, and I'm annoyed at how good it is. So yeah, very well. Yeah.
So you're expecting a defeat here?
Wow.
Okay. Tempest, congratulations. You had victory over Sullivan in the first round, and then Laurie in the semi-finals. Same question for you. How do you view your opponent today in the final?
I mean, it sounds like he's conceding.
I'm not saying you've got it in the bag. Where was the grandness? What was the epic year-long storyline? Yeah.
Whoa. We're the judges here. We're the ones asking the questions.
We've gone from humble to hyper-aggressive.
Jump over the table.
We're very emotional right
Within
now.
moments.
this really has escalated.
Let's look.
It's the final.
Well, you calm down, Tempest. We'll talk to Ollie first. It's a year-long storyline in your case that ends with Dean Ambrose back in WWE. Do you want to talk us through your logic of having Dean Ambrose be the person who ended it?
Well, arguably a 10-year plus storyline when you factor in all the.
You didn't write that though. So.
Apparently,
You're saying the judges are wrong.
just for context, Dean Ambrose, he's always been the other one in the Shield, hasn't he? Particularly from WWE management's eyes over who's been pushed. I mean, he was the one who ended up leaving the company to spread his wings elsewhere. And I think it's quite nice for him to come back and him be the one who ends Roman's reign and becomes a top star in WWE, rightfully so.
Early on in your scenario, we end up with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins together forming a new two-man power trip.
Did you just look up synonyms for Shield and say this will do, and you don't think people will just chuckle when they hear protection?
Yeah. So when I did literally do that. I typed in Shield and I looked through all the names and I thought, well, protection works because it was already quite a crime mob boss style dynamic I had between them, and I thought the protection in terms of racketeering, protection money.
So you looked through all the different synonyms for Shield.
There's not that many good ones.
And you thought protection's the best one.
That's the good one.
That's the best
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Survivor Series, we end up with Reigns and Rollins. No championships on the line.
I mean, that would make it too high stakes at that point in the story.
Do you not think there's a bit of a chance of fan backlash? It's one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year. Two most important titles in the company, neither's on the line.
I think there's precedent for that in Survivor Series, though. There's been numerous ones, AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar, Daniel Bryan. They had terrific matches without the championship belts being on the line.
This is a Dave issue, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
By that point,
I think I'm caught up on
You
this.
can just direct all of the eye contact to him on this one.
Both of these two were fine with it.
We weren't bothered.
Yeah. I'm disproportionately angry about it. It's these vignettes playing, and it turns out that it's Dean Ambrose. Not a lot of explanation.
Well, I only had 10 minutes. So I just, rather than go, oh, and by the way, he was released by AEW earlier this year or anything, I just thought let's just not get bogged down in any of that and get Moxley in there with a really cool metaphor.
What was explain the metaphor to us?
The Protection have turned WWE into somewhat of a prison.
Yes.
And of course, when Moxley left WWE in the first place, he broke out of the prison to go to AEW.
Why would you break into a prison?
Well, because it's he's breaking in to sort of free the people that have made it so bad. Free the people from the people who've made it so bad.
Okay.
Is the people what the
Protection.
Yes, yeah, essentially. Yeah.
So
And you
WWE
think-
are the prisoners.
WWE are the ones who have made it. They're the prison.
Sure.
So do you think that WWE would air a vignette where they're saying, "Yeah, we're the prison,
Well, I think
not a family, as we say. We're
Yeah.
a prison."
so. Back in the day, obviously, the prison was Moxley's way of saying, no, it's literally WWE's the prison. But in this one, I think they'd air it because it's like Nina says, the Protection is the prison here.
I feel like I had as many answers for his questions as needed, to be honest.
Yeah, you should be his lawyer. Tempest. Very different scenario in your case. The epitome of fantasy booking. It's very quick. AEW and WWE obviously announced this partnership. They've come to an agreement to run a show together. This all happens around Crown Jewel, which is at the start of November. And we're done at the end of November, Survivor Series. Do you want to explain why?
I didn't think drawing it out for a long period of time would actually be that beneficial. I think Survivor Series works best as a setting for a brand warfare type storyline. I can't see Roman losing the title to either Seth or Jon Moxley in this kind of scenario at a WrestleMania or anything like that. It would have taken a lot more setup to have something like that. So
why not do that? Why not go 6 months?
Again, for a number of reasons, one of which that we saw in Ollie's booking, where at that point, Roman Reigns would be champion for about 5 years. I think even in a fantasy scenario, that is a little bit too far.
Well, hang on. In Ollie's booking, he loses the title. In your booking, he still has the title.
That's fine,
Right, yeah.
Yes, because in my mind as well, I'm still imagining that Cody eventually challenges Roman at WrestleMania, and this doesn't interfere in that. But this is a fun little arc that they can go through in the fall for Survivor Series, and then still have all their own things going on going into WrestleMania.
But it just feels like it's almost like you're diminishing the importance of a Shield triple threat story. I know it's just something we'll throw in for Survivor Series while we're waiting to get to WrestleMania. This is huge.
Plus the AEW WWE partnership. Those are two huge things
Massive.
happening.
There are instances in the last 10 years or so where Survivor Series has felt very important because a really cool big thing was happening at it. And you look at the most successful ones that they did, whether that was the first Raw versus SmackDown one in 2016, or whether it was the one where NXT invaded, those things didn't have long-running things building up to it, and they didn't lead to lots of crossover coming out of it either. It was, this is a really cool thing to happen for this season. And ultimately, that I think is probably like the most likely scenario if you're going to have a WWE AEW crossover promotional event.
You've come up with something that's in itself very unlikely, but it's fantasy, right? Because we're doing WWE and AEW. But now in your own fantasy booking, you're constraining what's possible. So like, why don't, if we're going fantasy, well, why not have them work together for a longer period? Just, you chose not to.
I've chosen not to.
All right.
One of the bigger differences between Ollie's story and mine, where Ollie crafted a long-running storyline for all of the people to be involved with, and I think he did a very good job with that. Whereas I think in my booking, I took all three of the different characters in this story and just tried to dive deep into how everybody is feeling at this particular time. And it's more just a look at how all of these characters have grown as people since they started the Shield, broke up with the Shield, Jon Moxley left to go to AEW. It was a look at where everybody is at now, how the Shield affected all of them, and I'm not going to say that one or the other is a better way of approaching a story like this, but I just think they are very, very different in their approaches.
Well, presumably you think one is better because it's the one you chose.
Well, of course.
Yeah, all right.
I'm not going to throw shade just yet.
Just yet.
Just
all right.
yet.
The title that is up for grabs is decided in a triple threat match between Jimmy Uso, Wheeler Yuta, and Chad Gable. Do you think that the title that's up for grabs shouldn't be decided by those three men?
No, because again, this is one of the things that I was talking about when it was making sure that everybody is happy politically in AEW, in WWE. So I'm looking at these guys. These are the world champions of both companies. None of these guys are going to lose to someone from the other company, realistically. And I would have liked to maybe put a little bit more story involvement on different people coming in and being involved in promos and such, but I think that detracted from the overall story of what the Shield meant to everybody involved.
Maybe there just wasn't enough time.
I'm not gonna blame the constraints. I think it is the best way to get Roman Reigns' title on the line in this match without Roman Reigns having to do a job to anybody, because that is the most unrealistic thing I could possibly fantasy book.
I mean, here's a suggestion. I'm not saying it's better, because I'm not a fantasy booker. But what if, instead of a triple threat match that involves Chad Gable and Wheeler Yuta and Jimmy Uso, just did a fan vote?
I will never put things to a fan vote, especially after I lost the original Fantasy Booking Warfare because of one.
What you're saying is bring back Taboo Tuesday.
Cyber Sunday.
Yeah, Cyber Sunday. Nice.
You're listening, people at home, your votes suck.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
I have a question for Ollie.
Yes. I think you did it at least 3 times in your story. Seth has a chair, a steel chair.
Roll of 3.
You're rehashing the, hey, remember when the turn happened? There's a chair shot in the back. Is there a chance that you went to the well of nostalgia way too many times in an effort to make yourself look like a good storyteller?
Possibly. Also, I really enjoyed the props of my video, which I hadn't done before, and the chair was the most fun to swing. No, I think, so the first one, obviously, he doesn't do it because of an internal battle. In the second one, he does do it, so he does follow through. And then the third one, he tries to do it again in an evil act, in a heelish act, and that is the one that goes too far for him. So him going to that dark place again, like he did before, is what actually punishes him in the end and proves his undoing.
Well, if we're to judge your prop use, if we talk about your swinging of the steel chair, it was a bit low. It looked like it was very weak, uncrack-eggable.
I'm a safe worker.
Lance Storm over here.
No, we would advise that you never swing a chair at anyone, to be honest, and do not call yourself any kind of a worker ever again.
The holding of the belts was already a little bit of a
Enjoyed the props until now.
It's good. No, you had a steel chair.
I feel like a fraud.
No, just always
Stick to the day job.
And let's see, though, whether you're good at the fantasy day job that you've been having over these past few weeks. We are just about ready to make our decision, but before we do, you both get a chance to make a closing statement. Ollie, the man who was humble at the start, but really hasn't been humble at all, what's your final words on this?
Well, I think actually, if you put ours together, it's some cracking booking. Like your character dynamics and promo work, if you insert that into my Rumble Mania bit, which is the least developed, I would say, of mine, that would be a good merge of both. But overall, I think it's 2 different approaches. I'm just happy to be here in the final.
Well, ultimately, I do think that we have done a pretty good job in the final of this year's show. I'm very happy with how both of these turned out, but in terms of different approaches to this, I do think that my approach of focusing in on the characters and what the Shield has meant made for a more satisfying story ultimately for these characters than what Ollie decided to book. But ultimately, I will leave that up to you to decide.
You may now sit in silence and think about what you've done, while Nina, Michael, and I also sit and think who we are going to vote to be the winner of Fantasy Booking Warfare. The judges have made their decision. It is time to find out who is the champion of Fantasy Booking Warfare. I'll go first. Ollie, I appreciated the year-long story you were telling. I'm not sure why Dean Ambrose was breaking into a prison. I don't think the metaphor worked, but it was an excellent storyline, and you deserve to be in the final. Tempest. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, not really long enough to tell the story, but the story you told was excellent. And the promos, I thought, were exceptional. Everything about those 3 weeks was brilliant. So we've got 2 very, very good scenarios, both extremely worthy of being in the final. This was the toughest decision of them all. And I think I've made the right choice by going for Tempest.
To echo what Dave said, two great stories. I loved how different the two stories were. It's really given us as judges something to think about. Tempest, as I said, like the promo work was fantastic. Like the psychology behind like the who's 1, 2, 3, I think is a great way to go. And Olle, just their epic long build, all the service, the fan service of all the history of the Shield. I really, really enjoyed, culminating in a big WrestleMania match with a big twist with lots of places for us to go afterwards. This was really tough, but I've gone for the one that I was thinking, I really want to watch this and see how it plays out, which was both of them, but slightly more Olle.
Oh! I thought you were going to go the other way. Okay.
Well, here we are. To say this was not that difficult for me to decide. And maybe I should say, it's tough. I was in bits, I was in tears, trying to figure out who had the better booking choice. But I'm all about telling a good story. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Then again, I've been a part of stories that have taken years, and those are the ones that really make people cry in here. Grown men hug and cry, I've seen it. I chose a story that, to me, took from your previous battles. As in, you took stylings from people who you battled in the last rounds of Fantasy Booking Warfare. I saw those story beats and you saw what you could learn from your opponents. You applied it to this final important Shield triple threat. I also chose the one who, in my opinion, brought the most intriguing aspect of the fantasy booking to the table. And that's what it's all about, fantasy booking. Which is why the winner of Fantasy Booking Warfare is
Let's go! My God, you all need to take jobs as judges, because every one of you had me go like, oh, he's gonna pick that one, she's gonna pick him, she's gonna pick me.
Congratulations, Tempest. Commiserations, Olle. Let's hear from the runner-up, Olle. So near, yet so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, I said it in the office before we came down. When I finished watching your one, I was like, I'd prefer to watch that one. The promos were so good, so yeah, worthy winner.
Tempest, give us your victory speech.
It's a long time coming. A lot of people, when I started on the Wrestle Talk podcast 2.5 years ago, said I had a lot of really dumb ideas. And they might have been right, but you know what? Sometimes the dumbest ideas are the ones that have popped the most specific amount of people. I take great pride in this. I think everybody in this tournament has done a fantastic job, and it is not lost on me to be standing here, the one at the end of this tournament. To be the one standing at the end of this tournament, off camera, that Rich is now adjusting.
There you go, we got the pen there.
I will take this on, the new fantasy booking king of partsFUNknown. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Olle. Thank you, fans, for saying that our bookings are terrible.
And as the dust settles on this fantastic tournament, it is Tempest who triple power bombs Olle to be crowned as the least terrible booker of fantasy wrestling. We thank our special guests and excellent judges Nina Samuels and Michael Oku for making all of this possible, and thank you all for watching partsFUNknown's Fantasy Booking Warfare.
I thought it meant the most to showcase something that we never got to see on the main roster, as well as someone that I think just narratively fit the best.
Laurie, is your
ditto. Yeah, thanks for explaining my booking there, Tempest. Beating Asker Street, being the one to finally finish that, is such a major deal.